Do you want me to start?
I'm just going to let a few minutes pass just to let everyone come on board,
cool.
and then I'll welcome you. I'd like to allow a little bit of time.
No, that's fine. That's fine.
That's okay. Okay.
Yep, we're all good there.
Okay, welcome everyone to our webinar this afternoon. As I've just said, I'm allowing a couple of seconds for as many people to come on board as possible so that we don't miss anything. Mind you, you can get it on the recording later. Today, I have Toyin Laketu with us again. Toyin spoke to us in the hotter end of the summer about Brexit and gave us a great presentation on Brexit that day, which if anyone wants to look at it again, you can go through the archive and retrieve the data. Today, we're going to move to building export success, and Toyin is going to impart to us her learning in this area. So with that, I'm going to become stum and hand you over to Toyin. Toyin, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Emma. Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's session. So as I say, my name is Toyin. So just to kind of start off, a bit about myself. So I'm a fashion, business and digital support consultant, and I've worked for over 14 years working with startup and multinational companies, multinational businesses, primarily working on international trade. So I used to work as part of the Department for International Trade here in the UK, in the London regional team, working with fashion, retail and creative businesses and helping them to kind of to basically scope out new markets overseas and to find new business. But I also kind of work in things like business development and looking at creating strategies and marketing strategies. So since I left Department for International Trade, I've set up my own business called Onwards and Up, where I continue to provide export, digital and marketing support for established and startup companies. So I'm all about kind of trying to get stuff done and actually making things happen. And also along the side, in terms of what I do, I'm also a part-time lecturer at the London College of Fashion in the Business School department. So coming on to today, if you do have any questions, please get involved, please either put them in the chat and maybe email if you can maybe shout out, or if someone wants to kind of put on their microphone, happy to kind of answer your questions. So if there's anything that kind of comes up, please feel free to kind of chip in and kind of give your views and so forth. So what have we got going on today? So we're talking about building export success. So exporting, where to start with this? So maybe some of you guys are new to this. Some of you are kind of fallen into this, which tends to be predominantly the case with most people. Business comes to you and rather than you going out to it. So we're looking at where to start in terms of kind of making it much more strategic, much more proactive activity within your business. We'll be looking at how to scope out new markets, international markets. We'll also be looking at routes to market 2021, because I think one of the things that's kind of happened, which has been interesting over the past 18 months, is that, with COVID, it's created lots of new avenues and opportunities for businesses, and in particular small businesses, to be able to kind of go international. So we'll be kind of looking at some of those, but also looking at a particular aspect around growing your online business as part of that. So sit tight. So, okay, so where to start? So why start exporting? Exporting is a fantastic thing to do, especially if you kind of live in a small country where, you only have a finite number of customers that you can sell to. So it's a great way to kind of increase your sales and your profit margins. But also it's a great way to raise your profile of your business. And I've worked over the years with many brands who are completely unknown here in the UK and actually are household names in international markets. And sometimes it takes going international for you to be recognised back in your home country. And I have seen that happen where companies have gone to places like Japan, built up big business, and then come back to the UK and then been approached by lots of big department stores who wanted to stock them and so forth. But also looking at, if you're in terms of exporting, a decline in your market. So it might be that you are a trend-led kind of business in terms of what you do, or that there's lots of new competitors in the market. And so it's become quite saturated and very difficult for you to be able to expand and grow your business there. Also, another great reason for why it started exporting is diversification of your products. So it might be that in many cases that overseas markets love what you do, but actually it's an opportunity for you to be able to expand into new product categories, and so forth with those particular kind of funds. And I think most importantly, one of the key things, especially as small businesses, and if you are kind of struggling in terms of trying to become much more profitable as a business, economies of scale. So whilst you can maybe at the moment, I find it difficult to try and be able to hit those key kind of maybe manufacturing price points, exporting can be a great way to be able to kind of support that, and for you to be able to fulfill that and get better prices for your products and bigger margins kind of going forward. And so so one of the key things about, exporting, as we all kind of think, whether it's exporting or whether it's here in your home country, is thinking about, what makes you unique as a business. What is your unique selling point? What is your brand story? Do you clearly talk about this, so to speak? Because whilst here in your own home country, you might think that, what you do is unique. Actually, when you start to go to other countries, there are similar brands, similar businesses doing like for like, maybe on similar price points. And actually you might find that it becomes much more competitive. So it's really important to define and really refine your unique selling point, in particular in overseas markets. So some things to kind of think about kind of going forward in terms of kind of developing your business and where to start with this. So it's really important to conduct a business review, looking at your products or your services and making sure you really understand in terms of what you're offering to your customers, whether it's in your domestic market, but also in international markets. Do you have a clearly defined products or services? What is your supply chain? Because again, thinking about your supply chain, if all of a sudden you start to kind of grow your business in overseas markets, meaning more orders and so forth, do you have ease of access to those materials? Can your production be able to fulfill this? Do you need to employ more people if you are kind of a small creative business and so forth? But also if you are maybe a small business and maybe there's one or two of you in the business, is your business scalable? Are your processes scalable? So these are some of the things to really think about when you're kind of thinking about going into overseas markets. I've kind of worked with a business one time who went to Japan, and she's very, very small. And basically a buyer basically put in an order for 50,000 tote bags, which she wasn't expecting as her business. And it caused all sorts of problems, and just turned her business from being a small business into her then having to go off and source and find new factories in China that could possibly be able to kind of fulfill these particular kind of orders. So, looking to see what it is in your business you need to think about in terms of scalability, and can you support that as you kind of start to take on new markets and so forth. What is your product lead time? It's really important to understand what that is, because you need to be able to communicate that to your international buyers. They will have expectations, they will have deadlines in terms of meeting, and in particular if you're looking at some of the big department stores overseas, and even here in the UK now, they will give you particular time slots of when you have to deliver your products to those stores. And if you're not delivering within those time slots, it's like that you're going to get a penalty and they'll fine you for not making those time slots. So again, really important to kind of understand how that all works. Also, what are the extra costs involved in your products? Will you have to do more testing? Will you have to get relevant certifications as part of it because you're going into international markets? Really important to understand this. And finally, will any of these particular items, which we've kind of talked about here, impact your final selling price, and whether or not you can actually make it financially viable to be able to export overseas? But also kind of thinking about, kind of coming onto your resources, and if you're kind of thinking about expanding, do you require additional help or staff to be able to kind of fulfill you know, to fulfill this new particular activities? You know, what are the extra costs of this if you're going to do this? You know, what new skills do you need in your business? You know, one of the things I always find, again, working with creative companies, you love what you do, but you don't like selling. So, you know, if sales is not your thing, then maybe do you need to get someone in to come and do that for you within your business? And it might be also kind of looking at your home market, you know, so to speak. If you're looking at some international markets where there are language barriers, do you require someone that's got those particular language skills to help you to navigate and facilitate those particular businesses? And then coming on to your financial, you know, thinking about your pricing strategy, you know, and is there an applicable pricing formula? So have you created your pricing strategy so that, and we'll talk a little bit more about this as we go through, you know, making sure you've kind of created a flexible pricing strategy in your business, because it might be that you have kind of decided that you're going to sell direct to consumers, which tends to be the case at the moment with a lot of businesses. And so you're calculating prices where you're trying to create a competitive price point so that you can target the relevant customers and be able to sell to them. However, when you're deciding to go overseas, you know, all those additional costs, maybe import duties, maybe transportation costs, you know, maybe taking on new people, they all need to come out of that margin that you have. So, you know, it's really important to maybe review your pricing strategy now before you kind of think about going overseas and addressing that, so to speak. You know, as a business, you know, will you need extra, how will you fund your export activity? Is this something that you can fund from within the business? So continue to reinvest into export activity. Will you need to access funding or bridging loans and so forth to be able to support you with this? How will you fund this particular activity? You know, so to speak, you know, and what types of funds will you require? Will it be an investment? Will it be a loan? Will it be a bridging loan? So it's really important to think about these things. And then finally, thinking about, you know, your business presence. So thinking about where am I at as a business in my domestic market? Do you have a trading history in your domestic market? You know, so one of the things international buyers like to see is that you have got some level of trading history, that you've been able to fulfill maybe wholesale orders, or you've been able to fulfill relevant customers within the relevant timeframes, and, you know, and so forth. So it's really important to kind of think about, you know, being able to kind of present that, but also it helps international customers, whether it's that's buyers or individuals, where your business sits in the market. So for example, you know, who do you sell to? You know, it enables them to kind of go, okay, yes, you sell to a similar like business to mine, so that's fine. So it really helps them to kind of position where your brand sits in the market. You know, what are your credentials as a business? Do you have any, you know, PR, press, awards, accolades within the business that you've kind of got, you know, and making sure that you are using that as part of your story, making sure you're using that as part of your promotional and marketing material, and also pitching when you're talking to relevant customers and relevant buyers and so forth overseas. Also kind of exploring and researching, if you have had maybe some celebrity endorsements, whether or not those celebrity endorsements translate into international markets. Because whilst in your home markets, it might be that, you know, that particular star, you know, is massive in Ireland, you know, in Germany, nobody might know them. So really think about, you know, who you kind of put forward to, or you present to your customers and to your international buyers, so that it's applicable. Also kind of thinking about, you know, your stockists, your galleries, showrooms, private exhibitions, and thinking about where you sell and making sure you make that as part of your, you know, as part of your review, and being able to kind of present that to relevant international buyers. But also it's really important to kind of, when we're kind of doing or looking at all these different areas, whether it's your resources, your products, your finances, and your business presence, you know, it's great to kind of look and maybe kind of plot out a SWOT analysis, looking at your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats as a business, and understanding where your business sits and what it is that you need to do as a business. So one of the things I'm going to kind of run through in this webinar is I'm going to give you a couple of tools and some tips as well for you to kind of go away and look at and explore in your own time. So kind of coming to a SWOT analysis, it helps you to understand the internal and the external factors that can make or break the success towards your business goals. So, you know, it's basically a process of brainstorming. So really kind of sitting there and thinking, you know, what are my strengths as a business? Well, I've got a really strong brand presence, you know, I've got a strong social media following, you know, I've got good customer retention. So I've always got returning customers. But my weaknesses might be that, you know, I've not got enough people in the business to be able to scale it or to grow the business. You know, I'm not able to fulfill orders quick enough. What are the threats? It might be that, you know, your competitors are kind of, you know, are getting investment, are able to kind of look at expanding internationally, you know, but what are the opportunities? Well, if they're expanding internationally, then there's scope and opportunity for you to expand internationally as well as part of that. So really think about, you know, taking some of those points and then kind of really drilling down in terms of then kind of creating actions kind of going forward. So as I say, take time to plot out your business SWOT and follow up with the relevant actions kind of going forward. So then we move on to the kind of like scoping out international markets. So, you know, one of the things about international markets is kind of exploring international interests. So, you know, sometimes it's kind of like, okay, I'm going to export, where do I export to? So it might be that you're already getting business from overseas. You know, and if you are, that's great, because that's an easy thing to kind of then start to build on. So are you already serving international markets? You know, are you selling direct to consumers, galleries and showrooms, but also kind of assessing how did you secure that business? You know, so again, when people kind of come through to you or place orders, it's always good to kind of start to pull together, find out what channels, how did they find you? When people kind of contact me, wanted to work with me, I'm always kind of like, how did you find me? You know, so once you kind of find out how people found you, then think about how you can do more of that within your business in terms of your marketing plan kind of going forward. But also kind of looking at your competitors is another thing. So again, never look at things in isolation and kind of just think about yourself and kind of go, this is my business and this is what I do. You need to always continue to be looking around you and seeing what other people are doing. You know, so who are your competitors in your domestic market, firstly? You know, are they exporting? If so, where are they exporting to? Go and find out, go and do the research. You know, but also kind of looking at the relevant overseas markets, you know, who are your international competitors? So again, when you come to have those conversations with the relevant buyers and so forth, you know, you're able to kind of, you clearly done your homework in terms of understanding who the major players are in that market and where you sit and who you sit alongside. So it's really important to do that kind of homework kind of going forward. You know, also what is kind of looking at your competitors, what is their success and where do they sell? So kind of looking at, you know, what types of stockists they sell to, how they're selling, you know, what routes to market they're using, but also how do you compare on price, service and design against your competitors? And again, thinking back to the SWOT, taking some of those points and then going away and maybe actioning those kind of going forward. And then we need to think about types of strategies that we kind of pull together, you know, to help us to kind of build our international strategy. So, you know, most of us tend to sit in the reactive box. So we all tend to sit there and all of a sudden we get an email with an order from some random international person, you know, and that's great. And, you know, that tends to be predominantly the route to which most businesses tend to fall into exporting is they've got an order from overseas and they've fulfilled it, and that's kind of been it. But actually what we would like to do is for you to kind of take that reactive business and become much more proactive about it. How can we kind of build that business and grow it in that particular market? Is there any more opportunities for us in those markets? So this is where we want to kind of move from being reactive about exporting to becoming more proactive about it. And then kind of thinking about the types of strategies that you're going to be kind of developing. And, you know, business tends to kind of split into two types of strategies. So thinking about short-term strategy, which involves, you know, processes that show results within a year. So it might be looking at markets which are much more close home to you. So for example, the European Union would be a place of where you look to kind of create short-term export strategy. One is on your doorstep. Two, for you guys, luckily, you don't have no trade barriers in place. So, you know, you don't have to worry about trade barriers. And there are similarities in terms of culture, you know, and lifestyles and so forth. So it might be that you actually start exploring there as a first port of call. Also, it's easy to kind of access with a Ryanair flight or an EasyJet flight or an Aer Lingus flight. Also then kind of, you know, thinking about more long-term strategies. So these tend to involve, you know, processes over a longer period of time, tend to involve a large amount of investment. You know, it might be that you need to kind of go away and look at, reevaluate the processes within your business, whether it's, you know, scaling your business, getting your pricing right, getting the marketing right, maybe investing in some of the other areas in your business kind of going forward. And it tends to be markets that are a bit further afield, you know, so markets that aren't so easy to get to. Maybe there are cultural and language barriers within place, so to speak. But, you know, it's great to kind of look at exploring and developing, you know, export strategy, short-term export strategy for maybe 3 markets, and maybe then having two markets to explore for having a long-term strategy. And then we also have established markets and emerging markets. So established markets are those that are well developed with good infrastructure, political stability and steady growth. So, you know, places like Europe, the USA are great examples of established markets. And emerging markets tend to be places like India, maybe South America. You know, they're not quite there yet. There's lots of kind of bureaucracy, lots of kind of barriers in place, challenges and so forth in terms of doing business in those markets. Maybe there's fluctuations in currency and economic instability kind of going on there, but they're deemed as emerging markets because they've got big populations and potentially, you know, big populations with very young customer bases, which potentially will become the future generation of consumers for brands to be able to sell to. So when is a good time to internationalize your business? So there is no right or wrong answer in terms of how to do this, but you know, it's always good to have a track record of business of where you're based, you know, where your business is based, you know, having a strong growing customer base, because ultimately what you want is to have a solid base in your own home country, which becomes your bread and butter. Okay, so that you can then you've got good cash flow and access to finance to support any additional growth that you've got kind of going on. Also making sure you've got good established supply chains that are ready and are able to kind of scale with you when you start to take on those new markets and those new orders. But also understanding, you know, making sure you have a clearly understand what your routes to market are, and you have a clearly defined business model. So you know, as a business, do you sell wholesale? Do you sell through partnerships? You know, are you just going to be selling direct? Or are you going to sell online versus selling into physical stores? We'll talk a bit more about routes to market in a bit. So these are some of the things to kind of think about when you're thinking about kind of international, when is a good time to internationalize your business. So things to think about with, you know, getting ready to export, things to consider as part of your strategy. So, you know, trademarks are really important. And I think sometimes with creative companies, it tends to be one of the things that tends to be at the bottom of the list of things to do. But actually, in like the last couple of years, it's become more and more important as businesses to register your business trademarks. And actually, quite a lot of international buyers will not buy from you if you do not have your trademark. And I've worked with many brands over the years who, in particular territories, have not had their trademarks registered, and then someone's gone in bad faith, squatted and registered their business name in that particular market, and it's cost them a lot of money to get their name back. You know, so by not having your trademark, the implications are that buyers will not buy from you. Two, if people do buy from you, then potentially if someone has registered your name in their local territory, then potentially those goods can be confiscated from the shop floor, which again, with a brand I was working with, this did happen in China. All their goods were seized from luxury high department stores in China, and potentially all the goods will be destroyed as part of that. So it's really important. Also, buyers will not buy from you, because why would anybody invest in marketing a brand when the owners of the brand or the business don't even have the trademark, and someone might come look at their door? So it's really important to register that. So one of the things you can do is, one, you can register for your Irish trademark, but actually because you're part of the European Union, lucky you, you can actually register for the Madrid Protocol, which means that basically you'll get one trademark registration which will cover the 26 European member states. And I think you can register for up to 3 classifications, and it costs around about 740 euros to do that. And then you have that trademark in place for 10 years, but that will basically protect you for the European Union. Outside the European Union, you have other trademarks to kind of do, but that trademark can be actually done online through the European Intellectual Property Office, so to speak. Also, thinking about getting ready to export, do you have a credible website? So, this is how a lot of businesses and a lot of buyers and a lot of customers are finding people these days, is through social media and through your websites. And, your website, your social media, it's your window, it's your shop window. It's your first impression of what you're telling people about you. So again, thinking about how you present yourself on your website, on your front page, what kind of communications you're putting out. Are you being consistent in your branding and in your messaging and in the quality of the images and so forth that you're kind of putting out across all different digital platforms? So making sure you're kind of keeping those up to date. And again, I've kind of said here, do you have an established business model? So again, thinking about, how do you sell your products and how are you going to sell your products internationally? And then we kind of come on to international pricing, price lists. So this tends to be something that, people kind of get stuck with. So one, the key thing about your price lists is they should be converted into US dollars and euros. If you've got any kind of funny currencies like Japanese yen or Korean won that has hundreds of zeros on the end of them, don't even bother to entertain trying to convert your product prices into those particular currencies, because the likelihood is you'll be the one that will be losing out. Doesn't take too many zeros to kind of either be, to kind of lose a lot of money. So and most international buyers are quite happy to transact in euros and dollars, and also, depending on where your business is, in Great British pounds as well. So those are the 3 main currencies that internationally are recognised and will be working in. So don't forget to build in currency conversion costs into your price lists. Yeah, and also whether or not you're going to be creating price lists that is ex works. So that is just basically the cost of your goods from your office, or whether or not you're going to include shipping costs and delivery costs and import duties. Technically it would be, whatever kind of works for you, but have that conversation with the buyers, because they'll be able to tell you how they want your prices done. Also, when you're kind of creating your price list, international prices, fix them for short periods of time. Okay, so maybe fix your prices for maybe 6 weeks or so, so that you can take into account any kind of currency fluctuations. The last thing you want to do is be setting up an international price list and then giving it to a buyer or to whoever, and then they disappear and they turn up 12 months later, and maybe the euro is devalued by maybe 10-15%, and they want to place an order. Yeah, you're going to lose out. So, it's really important to kind of think about fixing them for short periods of time, but also, it's also kind of, and making sure you make that clear on your price list. It's also another way of kind of incentivizing them to get a move on and hopefully place an order with you sooner rather than later as part of the process. And then kind of thinking about getting paid, you know, we all want to get paid. Where possible, use pro forma invoice and try and secure 30% deposit upfront, with the remainder to be paid prior to shipping of the goods. And most, you know, most independent and small businesses, international businesses will do this. A lot of the department stores won't. So you need to kind of decide whether or not, you know, you're happy to kind of work on that basis, and whether or not you have the funds or the financial support to be able to kind of take on that kind of business. A lot of department stores will work on a basis of they will not pay for 90 days. Okay, so you need to kind of factor these kind of things into your wider kind of finances kind of going forward. So they might not pay for 90 days. And when they do pay, it might be a case of we'll pay, and then you need to give us a discount on our next order. So there's lots of kind of things that kind of come into play here. But also if you're in a situation where you can't afford not to be paid, or you can't put the goods into production because kind of like you've got a shortfall in your finances, then there's lots of different options that you can look at. So things like letters of credit can be used to secure international payments of orders. So for example, I was working with a business one time, they had a massive order for £70,000 placed with them for a Japanese company, and so they went to the bank and got a letter of credit, which enables them to basically, the bank to then kind of contact the company in Japan's bank, who then guarantees the money to them, so to speak, for them to, and if the bank in the UK releases a portion of those funds for them to be able to put that into production for them. Also, you've got bridging loans. So it might be that you kind of take out a small bridging loan just to plug the gap between the money in and money out, to be able to put your goods into production if you are in a situation where people don't pay up front. And it also helps to short-term cash flow to manufacture orders. Also maybe explore things like small business credit insurance. We have it here in the UK. I'm not too sure whether or not you have it in Ireland, but it's kind of come around in the last couple of years with a lot of businesses kind of going into administration. It tends to be that there's lots of small businesses supplying some of those big retail businesses some of the products that they have. So small business insurance enables you, covers you for things like, for example, if a retailer goes into administration, you can still get your money back. And then you have things like factoring, which is early access to funds from a credible company. So for example, if they're not going to pay you for 90 days, you can go to your bank and you can have a percentage of that money released, because the bank will kind of go, yes, this is a credible company, we're happy to release the funds to you. So there's lots of different ways and options of how you kind of manage your cash flow when you're looking at international markets. And then kind of thinking about scoping out new markets, new opportunities. So, this is something where you kind of sit down and do some desk work. So conducting some market research is a great starting point. So one, you might already have some orders coming through. So then kind of go and do some research and find out how, what's the size of the market, the population, what's the economic situation there? Is it a growing market? Is it a mature market? Are there people already there? Are there enough customers there for you to kind of go, this is a market for us to invest in? Where are your competitors? Look and see what they're doing. Also looking at kind of things like, looking at the ease and difficulty of the opportunity. How easy is it for you to be able to do business in that market versus how difficult it will be? And also how many routes to market are there in this market, which is really important, especially for small businesses. The more routes there are, the more opportunities there are for you to kind of explore that market. Once upon a time, the Middle East, it was a market which was just kind of like, all we do here is franchise. So if you've not got a franchise model or a retail store, we don't want you. But over time, that's now been changing. And there are more routes to market. Japan is a great place for small businesses because they have so many different opportunities and so many different options of how you can enter the market. So that's really important to kind of look at, what routes to market there are, and whether or not there's an opportunity for you to be able to enter that market with your business. And so, you know, one of the tools you can kind of use within this is a thing called a market ease and demand matrix, which is kind of like a market selection tool, which is a really good way of kind of plotting out lots of different markets and being able to kind of see, you know, assess, you know, through your research and so forth, you know, what markets are most suitable for you. So this is kind of creates various matrices to plot out and compare market analysis to assist with market selection. So for you, it would be kind of taking some of the key factors. So taking maybe top 5 factors that are important to you as a business in terms of looking at, you know, routes and looking at entering or looking at selecting an overseas market. And that could be, you know, how many routes to market are there? You know, how competitive is the market? What are the import duties like? You know, what are the barriers to trade there? How easy is it for me to get my money out of the market or to get paid? But you can plot this out on a matrix and then kind of do a compare and contrast in terms of looking at the ease and difficulty of entering the market. So this is an example of what we do. So when I was actually part of Department of International Trade, we actually used to do this with businesses, do market research and then plot out a market selection kind of grid to kind of work out, you know, where their businesses where their markets they were thinking about sat on that. So up the one side we kind of have demand for sorry, that should say Irish exports, versus along the bottom, you know, we have the ease of entry. And I've kind of pulled out here 4 different kind of factors. So looking at culture, you know, risk, regulations and language. So as we kind of go from left to right, it gets more difficult, and the opportunity for entry becomes much more difficult. And up the side, you know, the demand for exports is greater. So I've kind of plotted out here, you know, so for cultural, you know, ease in Austria, it's a European market, you know, there are similarities between the markets versus Japan, massive cultural differences. You know, so we've kind of plotted them out there. So you can kind of see that actually the demand for the products are high, but also the ease of entry into that market in relation to culture is very low. Whereas Japan, you know, the demand for products is good, but the ease of entry is going to be difficult on a cultural basis, so to speak. And then maybe kind of looking at risk. Again, we kind of look at that, you know, and we kind of factor into risk there, the fact that, you know, maybe the distance, you know, and how much money you have to kind of put in place to be able to do business there and so forth. And so when you start to plot it out, although it might be that all the signals and all the noise kind of saying, oh, let's export to Japan, actually Austria is the market that's kind of coming out as the market that potentially as a business you might want to kind of focus on. So it might be that actually as a starting point, Austria will be your short-term market, and then Japan will be your long-term market, because you know, there are lots more factors. It's much more difficult for you to be able to kind of enter that market in relation to these factors. So this is kind of like a little exercise you can do with all your information and so forth, kind of, you know, kind of going forward for the relevant markets. And then we have free trade agreements. So again, kind of thinking about your international markets and where to export to, you know, it's really important to kind of look and understand where in the world, you know, there are free trade agreements. So, you know, you're very fortunate. You sit in European Union, so you're in one of the world's biggest trading blocks. Yeah, so you're able to kind of serve, you know, 500 million people with your products. But as part of the European Union, they have signed 45 trade agreements around the world with other trading blocks and with other nations. So for example, you know, there is the Japan free trade agreement. So if your products are manufactured within the European Union, you can export to Japan, South Korea, Canada, and many other markets duty-free. There are no tariffs or import duties on your products for particular categories. If you are doing maybe fashion, jewelry, kind of lifestyle products, those tend to have no import duties on them going into those particular markets, so long as they are manufactured within the European Union. Markets outside the European Union, outside of these free trade agreements, either have preferential trade agreements, preferential kind of trading terms, or they'll be on the World Trade Tariff Organization. But for you guys, you know, within the European Union, one, you've got 26 markets or 25 markets to be able to service, plus, you know, you've got a lot of other markets as part of the free trade agreement. So have a look and see what free trade agreements are in place that you can utilize as part of your export strategy. And then kind of coming on to scoping out new markets in 2021. So kind of talking about routes to market. So yeah, you know, most probably 18 months or so ago, a lot of, you know, most probably the bottom after e-marketplaces, a lot of those weren't there. And I think over like last year, we've kind of seen so many new opportunities kind of pop up for companies. So whether it's selling direct, pop-up shops. So pop-up shops are another great thing to be able to kind of work with. So whether you're doing one yourself or you're working with, there's lots of companies now moving around and expanding into international markets where they're able to do physical pop-up shops for companies. One of them is called Paul's Pop-Up, who kind of do this kind of roaming tour around the world, doing pop-ups everywhere. Another one's called Lone Design Club, who's a UK-based company who kind of, they do stuff in Germany, they do stuff in Milan, and they do stuff in China. So have a look and see what opportunities there are to kind of work with pop-up shops. Also wholesale. Wholesale is not dead. Yeah, it's a bit more challenging, a bit more difficult. I think buyers are a little bit risk adverse, but you know, opportunity for wholesale is still there, and it's still really good business because actually, you know, that's, you know, getting a wholesale order from a store, big chunks of cash into the business, good for the cash flow. Definitely. Trade shows, yeah, they've been off the cards for like the last 18 months or so, but they're starting to make a comeback. So this month here in the UK, a lot of our trade shows are actually taking place in physical form. Whether or not there's very many international buyers coming to those, who knows? But trade shows are still another good route to market, a way for you to be able to go overseas, showcase your business, you know, meet with buyers and customers, get that feedback and start to build up those relationships. One of the things we'll say about trade shows is that they can be quite expensive, and also you need to have a long-term plan for trade shows. It's not a case of just turning up to a trade show, doing one and then coming home and going, well, I didn't get no orders, so that was a bit rubbish, I'm not doing that again. But actually, you know, buyers, because we are in a funny environment at the moment, buyers are very risk adverse. So it might be that they see you for the first season, clock you, come back next season, see how you're developing and evolving as a business and your product line. You know, are you being consistent? You know, are you still kind of, you know, resonating, promoting all your ideologies of your business through your products, you know, and then maybe season 3 might be the season when they actually place an order. So if you're looking to do things like trade shows, I would say, in particular, if you're doing European trade shows, I would say look to basically budget £12,000 to £18,000 for 3 years worth of shows. That includes your travel costs, your stand costs, and everything else, so to speak. Agents and distributors, you know, is another great way to be able to kind of, you know, if you've not got a huge amount of resources, you don't like selling, then maybe appointing an agent or a distributor could be another way to kind of access overseas markets. Agents and distributors are great because they're locally based individuals who have direct relationships with stores, and they can kind of build up those relationships. They can also, in some cases, do the trade shows for you, so you don't have to worry about doing them. You know, and so forth. The difference between agent and distributor: agents do not carry stock, so they just basically will communicate directly with the buyers. They will take orders. They may have a showroom, so there might be they might have a monthly retainer where you have to pay money to be part of their showroom every month, and then once they take the order, they then give it to you. and then you kind of decide whether or not you're going to fulfill it or whether or not you're going to do that. And then they will take a proportion of the commission, so maybe 25% or something like that. So that is why when I talked about the finances right at the beginning about your pricing model, these are the reasons why you need to think about what is my pricing strategy, because things like agents and distributors, they will take a cut of whatever the wholesale price is. They will be expecting, they will either be expecting commission, or in the case of distributors, they will be looking to basically get a discount. They will place an order with you and they'll expect a discount of around about 25 to 30% on your goods. Also, with a distributor, they will buy the stock off you and they will distribute it to where they see fit. So with agents and distributors, you have more control over agents in terms of where you sell, versus if you're with a distributor, you don't have so much of control over where your products are sold. And sometimes, you can kind of come into scenarios where your products get put and placed in the wrong places. So I was working with a luxury children's wear brand. We went to South Korea. They were in talks with this big group that were like, yes, we're going to open up 3 concessions for you in a department store, and we're going to have a lovely standalone store in this, it's very luxury high-end part of South Korea. And then the buyers went off and done some research and found that her stuff was being sold in the equivalent of Primark in South Korea, and they said, we don't want to work with you. And the reasons why was because they appointed a distributor who's basically just sent it to anybody in the market. So it's really important to kind of have a really good, strong relationship with a distributor. Ensure that they are wherever you can, find out who they're selling to. Sometimes distributors don't have to tell you where they're selling your goods, but ultimately you would like to try and get them to tell you, so to speak. Selling online, so that has obviously become a big thing over like last year or so. As I say, with Brexit, you don't need to worry, well, unless you're selling to the UK. But even so, with you've still got the whole situation of import one. You've still got the situation with one-stop shop. So making sure if you're selling to places like the European Union, you've got your VAT threshold set correctly for the relevant markets you're selling to. Licensing is another great route to market. So, if your products are unaffordable, for example, then potentially kind of giving people licenses to be able to manufacture products locally for you. But also it's a great way to be able to kind of diversify your products. Japan's a great market for that. If you kind of go there, you'll see brands like Vivienne Westwood, Cath Kidston, and Burberry, Portsmouth. They are literally licensed to death. You can buy a flannel from Burberry. Just all sorts of really, really random trinket things that you wouldn't find here. E-marketplaces, there's lots of them out there. And there's lots of them out there on a global scale. Some of them are discounted marketplaces, but also there are a number of them that are kind of working on a like-for-like, full price kind of market, full price. So for example, in the Middle East, there's marketplaces called Noon and Souk, which are really good marketplaces. Australia, there's one called Hard to Find, which is a bit like, if I'm not too sure if any of you are familiar with it, here in the UK, we have a marketplace called Not on the High Street. So it's a bit like that. But yeah, these are great places and they're always looking for brands to onboard and to work with them. But also we kind of have new channels that have kind of opened up over the last 18 months. So selling for your social media channels. So Instagram and Facebook in the last 18 months, have now got the shop app. So you can now sell your products directly through your social media channels, but also kind of working with influencers and looking, wherever those opportunities are, identifying influencers that you can work with in those markets, developing partnerships whereby, they can kind of help you to promote, but also for those, one of the things around influencers, making sure that you have influencers that also, as well as kind of posts on social media, they also have blogs or they have a website. They're the ones that are really crucial and really worthwhile having, because actually if they've got a website and they've got an e-commerce store, then, you know, there's more likely for there hopefully for you to be able to kind of generate sales directly through that. So those kind of channels, so to speak. But also kind of using targeted and sponsored ads as another way of kind of working. And we'll talk a bit more about this in a minute. And then kind of working in collaboration. So, you know, we've seen over that last year or so how brands, you know, maybe with different products, but complementary products are coming together and doing collaborations, but or maybe working with influencer in an international market and doing a collaboration with them as a way of kind of launching and leapfrogging into a new market. So, you know, I think it's become very creative in terms of how you can kind of, you know, enter overseas markets like the last 18 months or so versus what, you know, most probably 10, 15 years ago was kind of like, you got to go to a trade show, you got to stand at a stand for 3 days, and you just got to wait for some people to come past and talk to you. So, so a lot has changed, you know, and it's great. But if you wanted to kind of go and do trade shows, you know, here are some of the major kind of international trade shows for creative companies, jewelry, fashion, craft kind of companies that kind of happen. A lot of them happen in Europe actually, which is great. Maison Objet is one of the biggest you know, home lifestyle gift kind of trade shows. Inorgenta is one of the biggest for jewelry. You know, in Munich. You've also got Basel. Basel's really expensive. You know, it's always worth kind of, you know, always kind of say to people, it's always worth going and visiting the show before actually going, before investing in it, because also it's really important to kind of go and have a look at the show so you can understand the layout, so that when you do apply and they give you a rubbish stand, you know, then you can have that conversation with the show organisers and see whether or not you can negotiate and get a better stand. There have been many times when I've gone to Paris, you know, Paris Fashion Week, and seen really miserable companies stuck at the back of the hall, and like, you know, I was like, did you have a conversation? Did you visit the show? And they're like, no, I didn't. And it's come up, well, there you go. So it's really important to go and visit the show, go and have conversations with people, have conversations with some of the exhibitors and see how they're finding the show. You know, have conversations with the show organisers as well, you know, and see, you know, whether or not there's any special offers or any packages they've got kind of in mind for that. And then, you know, kind of thinking about digital and the evolution of digital. So once upon a time, you know, in like the 90s, we were kind of, you know, how we used to kind of order stuff, get a nice little catalogue, pick up the phone, type away. And now, you know, we're all sitting on tablets, mobile phones, laptops, and just kind of, you know, it's, yeah, so much has happened in like the last 20 years or so, but you know, it's all great. But the great thing about digital is it's, you know, entering new markets from the comfort of our own homes has never been more easier, you know, and also digital has kind of created this new level playing field where it doesn't matter whether or not you're a multinational company or whether you're a startup company with £50, you know, businesses can compete for the same customer bases, which, you know, you've never been able to do before, you know, and it's all about kind of how you use your digital tools. But also being able to explore new markets with low risk and small budgets. You know, you can kind of test lots of different things for your digital, and also it helps, and also your digital, again, you know, when I kind of, before the internet, I'm not that old, by the way, before the internet, you know, people used to kind of come to us and go, I want to export to an overseas market, and then we'd have to kind of go and have to talk to people in those local overseas markets and ask them what's it like and stuff like that. Whereas now, with your websites and with all of these different tools, you've got all this data. Yeah, you've got all this data in your hands. You can see who's coming to your website, what countries, and so forth. So you're able to kind of develop a much more effective overseas and much more cost efficient on, you know, international strategy in comparison to kind of go, okay, I'll pick Germany, do a report, and then find that nobody's interested in buying from them in Germany. You know, so some social media facts: 97% of consumers go online to find and research products and services. Also 97% of searches start with Google. So it's really important that your websites are optimized for Google and you can be found for sure. 47% of buyers, which is us, the customers, we want to see 3 to 5 pieces of content before we actually want to purchase something from you on social media. And then 27% of product purchases are on social media. So the conversion rate on social media is actually really high if you can really be, if you're really savvy about how you use things like sponsored ads. So first of all, when we're kind of thinking about digital, let's get to the start. One, you know, you should be tuned in and looking at your Google Analytics. This is the channels which, you know, your Google Analytics, you know, understand what channels users use to find you as a business. Okay, is it your social media? Is it your Instagram account? Is it your Facebook account? Is it your newsletters? Because again, I find people spending all their hours, waking hours on Instagram, and then I look at them, I look at their Google Analytics and kind of go, no one's clicking on your Instagram posts. You need to stop doing Instagram and you need to do more newsletters because you're getting more conversions that way. So really start thinking much more smartly and wisely as to how you're thinking about, you know, investing in your marketing. But also your Google Analytics will tell you where in the world customers are coming from, okay, how they're finding you, what parts of the world, how old they are, and you should be using all this data to be able to formulate, you know, if you want to kind of do things like sponsored ads, you should be using all this data to be able to kind of formulate a picture of how to target these particular kind of customers, you know, but also you can kind of find out things like, you know, customers, whether or not they're converting or whether they're abandoning carts. And if they are international customers who are converting or not converting and abandoning cart, then again, that can kind of give you some understanding as to what's going on there. In particular, if you're maybe trying to, you know, you've got lots of people from China coming onto your website and finding that they're abandoning cart, well, maybe you might need to invest in things like WeChat and Alipay, because they tend to be the most popular forms of payment services that Chinese people use. So that's the kind of information that you really do need to kind of delving down into, definitely kind of going forward. And then secondly, once you kind of got your Google kind of set up, you should also get yourself a Facebook pixel. Okay, so this is the gift that keeps giving. So if you're off at the moment and you've not got a pixel on your website, you're basically throwing money at Facebook, and Facebook are going, thank you very much, we'll have a bit of that and we're giving you nothing back. So it's a piece of code which you put onto your website, and it's a cookie, and it will track, basically it will track everybody that comes onto your website. So as soon as someone hits your website with this particular code, it then feeds back into the Facebook account, and Facebook then kind of match up and kind of go, has this person got a Facebook account? Yes, they have. And then within your Facebook Business Manager, you have these buckets. So you have ones where people viewed pages, you have buckets where people have abandoned carts, and you have buckets where people have checked out and bought something from you. And that is how you start to formulate your customer base. If you don't have a pixel and you're just kind of going onto your mobile, going onto Instagram and going, I'll put £10 on that, and away we go, then, you know, one, the cost of running ads is much more expensive, because by not having a pixel on your website, you're not giving Facebook any data. So they're kind of like, well, they're not helping us, so we're just going to basically charge them more for the data that they are using from us. So it's really important to have this pixel on your website, because this is how you can then optimize your ads within the Facebook Manager, so to speak, you know, and then be able to kind of remarket to customers, international customers, to get them to come back to your website and hopefully buy. So Facebook Manager, you should also get yourself a Facebook Business Manager. So again, if you are creating campaigns and ads, you know, don't do it on your mobile phone, do it in Facebook Business Manager, because you see so much more data in there, and you can optimize, turn off certain channels and optimize other channels, so to speak. But it's free, you know, and again, that's where all your data, which I've kind of talked about, these buckets, that is where all this information is stored in there. And you can set up and manage your sponsor ads in there, optimize your ads and your campaigns, and then you can kind of create targeted audiences from mailing lists. Also, you can import your mailing list into Facebook Business Manager, and then Facebook Business Manager will then kind of pair up and go, are all these people on your mailing list on Facebook? Yes, they are. And then you can start creating profiles that way. One of the things that I will say, and I've been to many Facebook conferences over the years, and they all talk about this lookalike audience, and they go, oh, you can create a lookalike audience. No, you can't. If you don't have at least 1,000 people on your mailing list, don't bother clicking on lookalike audience. It will not work. That is the minimum number of people you need to have on your mailing list to be able to do lookalike audience. Alternatively, if you decide you want to do lookalike audience for your website, you need to have at least 1,000 people or 2,000 people, I think a week coming onto hitting on your website, so to speak, for you to then be able to kind of create a lookalike audience. It will not work. Okay, so Facebook Business Manager helps to support all activities across Facebook, Instagram, Reels, and WhatsApp, and also for the marketplace as well. And then the other one is the Google. So if you've got a pixel for Facebook, you should also get a thick pixel for Google. So again, Google, if you're doing Google ads, you can kind of put a piece of tracking code on your website. And again, over time, it will collect data on who's coming to your website, and also collect data on the keywords that people are using to find your website. And then you can use the data to optimize your Google ads and create custom audiences. But also kind of thinking about your mailing list. So if you've got a mailing list, who are your customers on your mailing list? Have you got any international people on your mailing list? Analyze and understand how they signed up to your mailing list, but also kind of thinking about how you can utilize your mailing list audience. What incentives can you provide customers in your target market to spread the word about your business and gain more customers on your database? So, can you run competitions where they kind of, tell their friends,
Toyin, yeah, do we have many more? I've got the sands of time running out of me here.
Yeah, I'm near enough done now.
Okay, sorry, thanks.
Yeah. So, mailing list is another option of what you can do. So, stepping stone. So, kind of thinking about the stepping stones to exporting. So building your online presence is more important than ever. And significant followers on social media channels can create new opportunities overseas. Also, kind of building your online presence for your social media channels is important because international buyers will be looking to see what you are doing and how much time you're investing on your social media channels. And also your social media channels are part of your wider marketing assets, because buyers will want to know how many followers you have on social media to understand how much they need to invest in you in their local markets to be able to kind of, attract new customers to come and, and engage with your brand. So, kind of finally thinking about, kind of going forward, take time to build relationships with prospective buyers and customers. Don't forget to visit markets and understand the landscapes, when we can. Visit key industry events to research before investing in participation, and be creative about your marketing your business through PR, influencers and partnerships. The world is your oyster now in terms of how you can do business. There's no set template in terms of how to kind of grow your business internationally. And final thoughts. So understand your business position in exporting. Okay, analyze past experiences and successes and failures, assess your business's strengths and weaknesses, and build achievable goals to support your export activity. And, constantly just keep researching all the time, and leverage your business data to build cost-effective market strategies, because it's all there now. You've got it all there. So that's it from me.
Toyin, that was absolutely fantastic. And I'm sorry if I was moving you on slightly.
No, that's fine. People always
we nearly could have divided up into another one. So I think everybody was really happy with that today. It was absolutely action-packed. And you know what I'm going to do? If anybody has a specific question, if they could email me, and I'll forward it on, because some of them might be kind of private questions and that kind of thing, Is that okay? So yeah. We'll leave it at that. And thank you very much to our audience today. And thank you, Toyin, and we'll be in touch. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Lovely seeing you all again. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Great. Have a nice day.
Bye-bye.